Sit with the kids where you belong, my stepmother sneered at Thanksgiving dinner. The next morning, the family watched in shock as workers replaced the company sign with my name. The result was the aroma of roasting turkey and pumpkin pie filled my father's mansion, but all I could smell was my stepmother's expensive perfume as she blocked my path to the dining room. "Oh, Alexandra," Barbara said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "The adults' table is full. Why don't you sit with the children? It's more appropriate." I glanced past her to the main dining table, where my father sat at the head, deep in conversation with my stepbrother David about their company's latest acquisition. At 34, I was hardly a child, but that had never mattered to Barbara. In her eyes, I would always be the awkward teenager who didn't fit into her perfect family portrait. "The kids' table," I said. I kept my voice neutral, though my hands clenched at my sides. I haven't sat there since I was 16. "Well, we have important business matters to discuss," she said, gesturing to the main table where various executives from Harrison Global sat with their spouses. "You wouldn't understand anyway, dear. You've never had a head for business." If she only knew. While they thought I was running a small investment advisory firm, I had quietly built Harrison Capital into one of the most powerful private equity companies in New York. The press called me the ghost because no one knew who owned the firm that was systematically acquiring some of the city's most prestigious businesses, including, as of this morning, controlling interest in Harrison Global. "Fine," I said, turning toward the rickety card table set up in the corner. "I'll sit with the kids." Barbara's triumphant smile followed me as I made my way past my teenage cousins and their smartphones. My father didn't even look up as I passed, too engrossed in explaining Harrison Global's 5-year expansion plan, the David A plan I knew would never materialize. "Alex." My 10-year-old cousin Tommy beamed as I sat down. "Want to see my new video game?" I smiled genuinely for the first time that evening. "Sure, buddy." At least the kids were real, no hidden agendas, no social climbing. Just honest enthusiasm for life. Unlike the main table, where every conversation was a carefully choreographed dance of power and influence. Harrison Global's stock hit another record high today, David announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Dad's leadership is really taking the company to new heights." I bit back a smile, thinking of the documents sitting in my office downtown. Harrison Global's stock price was artificially inflated, propped up by creative accounting. And my father's reputation. Tomorrow, everything would change. "Alexandra," my father finally acknowledged my existence, "how's that little investment firm of yours doing?" Before I could answer, David snickered. "Still giving financial advice to retirees, sis?" "Something like that," I replied, watching Barbara beam at her precious son. "You know," David continued, "if you ever want to learn real business, I could probably find you an entry-level position at Harrison Global. Something simple, of course." The kids' table suddenly felt like the perfect vantage point to observe this scene of family dysfunction. My father, once a brilliant businessman, had become complacent, letting David and Barbara's influence cloud his judgment. They had turned Harrison Global, the company my grandfather built, into a hollow shell of its former glory. My phone buzzed quietly in my pocket, a message from my assistant. "Everything's set for tomorrow. Press release scheduled for 9 a.m. Anyone interesting at your new firm?" Barbara asked with feigned interest. "Any potential suitors? You're not getting any younger, dear." I thought about Michael Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Industries, who had just agreed to be Harrison Capital's new president after the takeover. He'd been quite interested when I revealed I was the mysterious owner he'd been negotiating with for months. "No one special," I said. "Such a shame," Barbara sighed dramatically. "All work and no play. No wonder you're still single." I glanced at my watch. In less than 15 hours, Barbara would learn exactly how I spent my time. The thought almost made the kids' table worth it. "More turkey, Alexandra?" my father called out, finally remembering his actual daughter existed. "No, thanks," I replied, watching him return his attention to David immediately. My father hadn't always been this way. Before he became obsessed with molding David into his perfect heir, he'd been different. He was the one who taught me about business, who let me sit in his office after school and learn about stocks and investments. But that changed when he married Barbara 12 years ago. Suddenly, everything became about David, the son he never had. I was quietly pushed aside, my suggestions ignored, my insights dismissed. Even after graduating top of my class from Wharton, I was still just his little girl who didn't understand business. So I left. Took my trust fund and the lessons my father had taught me and built something of my own, something bigger than Harrison Global would ever be under their leadership. Now you can watch the second part by pressing share and more.